Let your body sink a little deeper into where you are resting. Feel the weight of the day, all of it beginning to lift slowly, like morning fog rising off a quiet mountain lake. You don't need to hold on to anything tonight. Not the deadlines, not the conversations that went unfinished, not the thoughts that have been circling like hawks above an open field all day long. Tonight we are going somewhere else entirely. Tonight we are going back to a time when the world moved slower. When a man could stand at the edge of a mountain ridge and hear absolutely nothing except the wind moving through the trees and the distant sound of water finding its way downhill, the way water always does, patient and unhurried, knowing that it will get where it is going eventually. We are going to the Great Smoky Mountains. And we are going to the towns that grew up in their shadow, the towns that bloomed like wildflowers in a spring meadow, bright and full of color and life, and then, slowly, quietly, returned to the earth from which they came. This is their story, and it is one of the most beautiful, most peaceful, most quietly heartbreaking stories this land has ever held inside itself. So close your eyes if you haven't already, breathe in slowly, and let the mountains find you. Imagine, if you will, the year 1849. Not the 1849 you may have read about in textbooks. Not the dates and the maps and the bold black ink of history lessons. No, the real 1849. The one that smelled like pine resin and horse sweat and wood smoke. The one that sounded like the slow creak of wagon wheels rolling over unpacked earth. Over stones that had never felt the pressure of a human hand, over ground that had been sleeping quietly for thousands of years before these people arrived, with their dreams tucked under their arms like folded maps. The wagon trains moved west in long winding lines, like rivers of canvas and leather and hope, stretching back so far along the horizon that a man standing at the front of the line could not see where it ended behind him. And the people inside those wagons, the people. Young couples who had left everything they had ever known, their mothers' kitchens, the church where they were married, the fields their grandfathers had cleared by hand, because somewhere out west, the earth itself was giving up gold. Not metaphorical gold, not the gold of opportunity or the gold of a new beginning, though those things were there too, folded into every mile of that long journey. Actual gold. Gold that could be pulled from riverbeds with bare hands, gold that glittered in the afternoon sun like pieces of fallen star. Gold that had been sitting in these mountain streams and desert valleys for millions of years, patient as stone waiting for someone to find it. And find it they did. The word spread the way wildfire spreads. Faster than reason, faster than caution, faster than the voice of anyone sensible enough to say, wait, slow down, think about this. By the time the news reached the eastern cities, it had already grown larger than itself. Stories of gold nuggets the size of a man's fist. Stories of men who had arrived penniless on a Monday and wealthy beyond imagination by Friday. Stories that were half true and half dream and completely impossible to resist. So they came. They loaded their lives into wagons and they came. Across the wide flat prairies where the grass stretched to every horizon and the sky was so enormous it made a person feel both very small and strangely free. Through the great river crossings where the water ran cold and fast and the oxen bellowed and the children held tight to whatever they could reach. Up into the mountains where the air thinned and the trees grew taller than anything they had ever seen back home, trees so old they had been standing since before their great-great-grandparents were born, trees that had watched seasons pass the way we watch minutes pass, unhurried and untroubled. And the silence. The silence of those mountains in those days was something that no one who experienced it ever quite found the words for. It was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of fullness, of a world so complete in itself, so deeply alive that it had no need for noise. A silence you could feel pressing gently against your eardrums. A silence that made the distant sound of a creek seem loud, and the sound of a single bird seem like a symphony. And then, into that silence came the sound of hammers. The first structures were rough things, boards cut green from freshly felled trees, still wet with sap, still smelling of the living wood they had been just days before. Nails driven in at angles because the men doing the building had been farmers and merchants back east, not carpenters, but they were learning, the way people learn when the need is great enough. First came the shelters, simple four-walled structures with canvas roofs that flapped in the mountain wind like enormous wings. Then came the walls with proper roofs of rough-cut shingles. Then came the floors, laid over the bare earth. And the sound of boots on wooden planks was, in those days, the sound of civilization arriving, the sound of permanence being declared. And then, almost before anyone fully noticed it happening, there was a town. The murmur of voices drifted through the unpaved streets. Distant laughter rolled out from the doorways of newly built saloons. A horse whinnied somewhere at the far end of the road. The creak of a sign swinging in the wind mixed with the clink of glass from inside a building. All of it soft and present and real. The sounds of a place coming to life, of human beings doing what they have always done when they find a place worth staying, which is making it into something that feels like home. The boom town is. Let me take you to 3 of these places now. Let me take you there slowly, the way you might walk down a quiet road at dusk. No hurry, no destination except the walking itself, the noticing, the being present in a place that deserves your full and unhurried attention. Bodie, California. The first place is Bodie, California. Say the name quietly to yourself if you like. Bodie. It has a sound to it, doesn't it? Something hollow and wide, like the sound of wind moving through an empty door frame. Something that feels both very close and very far away at the same time. Bodie sits high in the mountains of eastern California, nearly 8,500 feet above sea level, high enough that the air is noticeably thinner, noticeably cooler, noticeably cleaner than the air of the valleys below. In the summer of 1877, a new vein of gold was discovered there. A vein so rich that the news of it spread across the country in days, and within a single year, the population of Bodie swelled from a handful of stubborn prospectors to nearly 10,000 people. 10,000 people. On a mountainside. In a place where winter temperatures dropped so far below zero that men who fell asleep outside simply did not wake up again. But they came anyway, because gold has a way of making the cold seem temporary. Stand with me now at the edge of Bodie in the summer of 1878 and let me describe what you would see. The main street runs east to west, following the natural lay of the land, wide enough for 2 wagons to pass each other without trouble, though this is not always what happens. The street is unpaved, packed earth and dust and horse traffic, and in the dry summer wind it rises in golden clouds that drift slowly across the storefronts, like slow worn ghosts. The buildings on either side of the street are pressed close together, shoulder to shoulder, the way people stand in a crowd, wooden fronts painted in whatever colors the supply wagons had brought up from the valley. Faded blues and sun-bleached reds and the pale yellow of pinewood left to dry in the California sun. Every building has a purpose. There is the assay office, the most important building in any gold town, where the day's take is weighed and assessed and turned into the numbers that determine whether a man sleeps easy or lies awake staring at the canvas ceiling of his bunk. There is the general store, its window displaying goods in careful arrangement. Bolts of fabric in colors that seem almost impossibly bright against the grey-brown of the mountain landscape. Tins of food with illustrated labels, tools hanging from hooks, boots lined up in a row like soldiers waiting for orders. There is the hotel, 2 stories, the upper floor reached by an exterior staircase that shudders slightly in the wind, where a man can rent a room for 50 cents a night or share a bed with a stranger for 25. And there is the saloon. Of course there is the saloon. Of course there is the saloon, at least one, often several. The saloon is the living room of the gold town, the place where the day's work ends and the evening stories begin. The place where men who have spent 12 hours on their knees in a cold stream straighten up and find their voices again over a glass of something that burns pleasantly all the way down. Step inside for a moment. The smell hits you first, whiskey and wood smoke and sawdust, and the particular human smell of men who work outdoors and sleep in close quarters. It is not an unpleasant smell exactly. It is a working smell, a living smell. The bar runs the length of the far wall. Plank wood, smooth from use, with a brass rail below for resting a boot. Behind it, the shelves of bottles catch the lamplight and hold it, amber and gold, like liquid sunshine preserved in glass. The piano in the corner is nothing fancy. A battered upright that arrived in pieces on a wagon and was assembled by a man who claimed to be a piano tuner, though nobody could quite verify this. It lists slightly to the left. 3 of its keys stick. But when the player, a small, quick-fingered man from San Francisco who goes by the name of Eddie, sits down at it each evening around 7, the sound that comes out is warm and bright and real. And for the men gathered in that room, it sounds like civilization, like home, like every parlor and sitting room and Sunday afternoon they have ever known and left behind. Those 3 or 4 simple notes repeating and weaving through the smoky air. It is the sound of hope in an unlikely place. It is the sound of human beings doing what human beings have always done, making beauty where they find themselves, even if where they find themselves is a mountain in the middle of nowhere, even if the cold is coming, even if nothing is promised. Now step back outside. The evening air hits you clean and cold after the warmth of the saloon. A cold that carries the smell of pine resin from the mountains above and the particular dusty sweetness of dry mountain grass. The sky above Bodie in the evening is something that a person raised in a city simply cannot prepare themselves for. No electric light to soften it. No haze of smoke from thousands of chimneys, well, some smoke, from the cook fires and the smelting works, but not enough to dim what lies above. The stars come out one by one, and then all at once, the way stars do. First, just a few of the brightest ones, Sirius and Venus and the steady red point of Mars, and then more and more and more, until the whole sky is thick with them, layer upon layer, so many that the spaces between them seem as full as the stars themselves. A man named James Cain wrote in his diary in the winter of 1879 that the stars above Bodie were so bright on a clear night that he could read by them. He probably couldn't, not really, but you understand what he meant. He meant that those stars were so present, so overwhelming, so nakedly beautiful that they made him feel something large and quiet and hard to name. The feeling of being very small in a very large world. The feeling, strangely, of being exactly where you are supposed to be. Walk with me now along the edge of Bodie in those years. Notice the small details that history books tend to leave out. The way the wood of the buildings has been silvered by the sun and the wind until it looks like driftwood, like something the sea has worked on for years. The small kitchen gardens behind some of the houses, brave little rectangles of turned earth where women with strong hands and stubborn hearts have managed to coax something green from the reluctant mountain soil. Not much, some onions, a few rows of potatoes, some herbs in a clay pot on a windowsill. But green, stubbornly, persistently green, the children. Always the children, running between the buildings in groups, playing the games that children have always played. Chasing, hiding, the elaborate invented mythologies of childhood games that make complete sense to everyone playing, and no sense at all to any adult watching. Their voices carry in the thin mountain air, laughter high and clear, the purest sound in any human settlement. A small girl in a blue dress. Her name is Clara. She is 7 years old. Her father works at the stamp mill and her mother takes in washing, is sitting on the front step of the assay office drawing something in the dust with a stick. She doesn't know that this moment, this particular arrangement of light and dust and a girl drawing with a stick is something worth remembering. She is just drawing, but we are watching from across the distance of 150 years, and we know something she doesn't. We know that this moment, like all moments, is precious. We know that this street will not always sound like this. But for now, just for now, it sounds like this. The hammers and the voices and the piano and the children and the wind moving through the pines on the ridge above. the sound of a town that is fully, completely, gloriously alive. St. Elmo, Colorado. Come now to another place. Let the sounds of Bodie fade behind you like the end of a song. We are moving now, drifting the way a leaf drifts on still water. Not pushed, not pulled, just carried by the gentlest of currents toward the next thing. We are going to St. Elmo, Colorado. Elmo sits in a narrow mountain valley at over 10,000 feet above sea level, higher even than Bodie, tucked between ridges so steep and close that the sun clears them only for a few hours in the middle of the day before dropping behind the western wall of stone. It was founded in 1880, when the silver strikes in the surrounding mountains brought a rush of miners and merchants, and the particular brand of optimistic chaos that follows any significant mineral discovery in the American West. At its peak, St. Elmo had a population of nearly 2,000 people. Remarkable when you consider how narrow the valley is, how high the altitude, how punishing the winters. Winters in St. Elmo. Let me tell you about those winters. The snow begins in October, sometimes in September, falling in great soft curtains that the wind shapes into drifts against the sides of the buildings. Drifts so tall they sometimes reach the second-floor windows, so that a man might wake in the morning and open his door to find a wall of white, packed and blue-shadowed and solid as stone. The cold in those winters was a physical presence, something that had weight and intention, something that pressed itself against the walls of the buildings and searched for gaps and found them. Always found them, slipping through around the window frames and under the doors and making the wood stove work twice as hard as it should. And yet, people stayed. People built homes and raised children and planted those brave little kitchen gardens in the brief fierce summers, and they stayed. Because there was silver in the mountains, yes, but also because they had made something here. Because they had looked at this impossible valley with its punishing winters and its thin air and its narrow strip of sky between the ridges, and they had decided, quietly, without ceremony, without even necessarily realizing it, that this was home, the main street of St. Laz. Elmo in the 1880s smells like pine smoke and horse and the particular cold clean smell of high altitude air, with underneath it all the faint mineral scent of the ore that has been pulled from the mountains, a smell like old coins, like deep earth, like the inside of a cave. The general store is run by a woman named Annabella Stark. This is not common in 1882 for a woman to run a business, but Annabella Stark was not much interested in what was common. Her store is warm. She keeps the stove stoked better than anyone else on the street, and it smells of coffee and tobacco and the sweet sawdust smell of fresh cut pine. The shelves are organized with the kind of obsessive neatness that comes from a person who understands that order is a form of sanity. That when the world outside is chaos and wind and unpredictability, the arrangement of tins in neat rows is a statement of intent, a declaration that here, at least, things are under control. She knows every customer by name. She knows that James Whitmore takes his sugar by the 5-pound bag because his wife likes to bake on Sunday. She knows that the young man from Ireland, Padraig, though everyone calls him Patrick, sends half of everything he earns home to his mother in County Clare, which leaves him very little for anything else, which is why she sometimes adds an extra £0.5 to his flour order without adjusting the price. She knows that the little girl who comes in every Saturday with a list written in careful childish letters and a coin clutched in her fist always spends a long time looking at the hard candies in the jar on the counter, taking this decision with the absolute seriousness that children bring to decisions that matter. These are the details that history forgets. These are the details that made a place real. The stamp mill runs night and day processing the ore from the mines above. Its sound is the heartbeat of St. Elmo, a deep, rhythmic thudding that you feel as much as hear, a vibration that travels through the earth and up through the floors and into the soles of your feet. After a while, the people of St. Elmo stop hearing it. It becomes part of the silence the way a clock becomes part of a room. Not silence exactly, but the particular quality of sound that this place has, its own acoustic fingerprint. The thing that, if you were away from it for a few days and then returned, you would notice first as presence and then, gradually, as comfort. the rhythm of work, the proof of industry, the heartbeat of the mountain, Elkmont, Tennessee. And now let us come to our third town, the one that is perhaps most directly connected to the mountains that give this story its name, Elkmont, Tennessee. Elkmont sits inside what is now the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, in a wide, gentle valley along the banks of the Little River, a river so clear that you can see every pebble on its bottom from the bank above, every ripple and shimmer of light on the stones below the surface. Unlike Bodie and St. Elmo, Elkmont was not primarily a mining town. It began as a logging settlement. The Little River Lumber Company moved into the valley in the early 1900s, bringing with it the sound of axes and the smell of sawdust and the particular organized chaos of industrial logging operations in the southern Appalachian Mountains. But Elkmont became something else too, something quieter, something more unexpected, because the wealthy families of Knoxville discovered it. They came first on the railroad that the lumber company had laid to move its timber out of the mountains. A narrow gauge line that wound along the riverbank with the kind of intimate, unhurried relationship with the landscape that only the smallest trains managed to achieve. They came on that little train and they stepped out into the valley and they looked around at the mountains above and the river below and the light falling through the trees in long golden columns, and they understood immediately. This was a place that required nothing from you. This was a place that gave everything. They built cabins here, modest at first, then more elaborate. And they formed a club, the Appalachian Club, and they came every summer to escape the heat of the city and the noise of their complicated lives. And they brought their children and their hammocks and their fishing rods and their leisurely summer ease. Imagine Elkmont in the summer of 1920. The cabins line the riverbank, painted in the muted greens and browns that blend into the forest behind them, as if the people who built them were trying to apologize to the landscape for their presence, trying to say we are here, yes, but we are trying not to disturb you too much. The porches. Every cabin has a porch, wide covered porches facing the river, with rocking chairs arranged in the particular casual order of places, where people spend long, unhurried hours, not perfectly spaced, not according to any plan, but placed the way they ended up after years of being moved for comfort and for conversation, and for the precise angle of afternoon light. An old woman sits in one of those rocking chairs now, in the summer of 1922. Her name doesn't matter. Or rather, it matters very much, but she didn't leave it in any record that has survived to us. She is perhaps 70 years old. Her hair is white and pinned up with the kind of casual competence that comes from 50 years of pinning hair. Her hands are folded in her lap. Her eyes are closed. She is listening to the river, not listening for anything, not waiting for a sound that would tell her something she needed to know, just listening. Just being in the presence of that sound the way you might be in the presence of a piece of music you love, not trying to understand it or analyze it or remember it, just letting it move through you. The river runs cool and clear and continuous over the smooth stones of its bed, and the sound it makes is the sound of something that has been doing this same thing, this patient, purposeful flowing for 10,000 years and intends to keep doing it for 10,000 more, regardless of what the people on its banks do or don't do, build or abandon, dream or forget. The old woman in the rocking chair breathes in, breathes out. The mountains rise around her on all sides, blue-green in the summer haze, their shapes familiar now, after so many summers that she could close her eyes and trace their silhouettes from memory. Which is exactly what she is doing. The sound of the river carries her. She doesn't need to go anywhere. She is already where she needs to be. Atmospheric detail, the daily life sounds. Let me gather you closer now. The three towns, Bodie and St. Elmo. Let the three towns, Bodie and St. Elmo and Elkmont, become a single, composite place in your mind. A town that exists only here, only in this story, assembled from the best and truest details of all three. You are standing in the middle of a street in this composite town. It is late afternoon. The sun is dropping behind the western mountains, and the light that remains is the particular golden angled light of the last 2 hours of a mountain day. Light that seems thicker and warmer than midday light. Light that makes every surface look as if it has been gilded, as if someone has gone over the whole world with a fine brush loaded with gold. close your eyes. Within this imagining, close your eyes and just listen. The clink of gold coins on a wooden counter in the assay office. A sound like small bells, like brief, bright music. A man counting 1, 2, 3, and then a pause, and then the weight of what those numbers mean settling over him like a cloak. The rhythmic sound of a pickaxe on stone somewhere up the slope above the town. A sound that reaches you softened by distance, its hard edges rounded by the air between, so that it sounds less like work and more like a slow, patient tapping, like someone knocking at a very large door. The soft crackle of a campfire. There is nothing quite like the sound of a campfire at the end of a day. It is the sound of the day being transformed. Fuel becoming light, solid becoming smoke, the present moment becoming heat that rises and disperses and is gone. It is the sound of simplicity, of all the complicated machinery of the day winding down to this one ancient thing, fire, and the people around it, and the dark pressing in from all sides, and the stars above doing what the stars have always done. A voice. Someone, a man older, his voice roughened by years and weather and too many evenings in rooms with smoky chimneys, is telling a story to the people around the fire. You can't hear the words from here, just the cadence of it. The rise and fall of a human voice doing what human voices were made to do, making meaning, making connection, making the darkness a little smaller. Laughter from the fire. The soft crackle answers. A log shifts, and a shower of sparks rises briefly, orange and red and gold, like small celebrations, like tiny brief stars, and then settles. And then the night is just the night again, vast and dark and full of the sounds of things that live in it. The crickets have started, not many yet, just a few, testing the evening, seeing if the temperature has dropped enough, if the light has faded enough. If it is time, it is time. One cricket, then two, then a dozen, then the whole chorus of them, filling the spaces between the other sounds with their patient, rhythmic song. The sound of the living world going about its eternal business, unconcerned with gold or silver, or the dreams and disappointments of the people who have chosen to make their lives on this particular patch of earth. The piano starts up again in the saloon. That same simple melody, those same 3 or 4 notes, repeating and weaving and finding their way through the evening air to where you stand. And you think, or you don't think, exactly, because thinking is too active a word for what happens in moments like this. You simply feel that this is enough. This moment, this particular arrangement of light and sound and air, this is enough. Let that feeling stay with you as we move forward. You don't need to hold it. It will hold you. You are doing beautifully. Your breathing has slowed. Your body is heavier now, a good heaviness, the heaviness of someone who is exactly where they should be, settling into exactly the rest they need. The mountains are around you, the old towns are dreaming, and we are just beginning. We've too, the turning of the tide. Every boom has its end. This is not a sad thing to say, or not only sad, it is simply the truth of the world, and the world's truths, when you hold them gently enough, are never only sad. They are complex and layered and shot through with beauty, the way a piece of quartz is shot through with veins of gold, the ordinary and the precious inseparable from each other, each making the other more visible by contrast. The gold ran out, or the silver, or the timber, or the railroad came through a different valley and the merchants packed their wagons and followed it, or the mines flooded, or the wars came and took the young men away, and they didn't all come back. And the ones who did come back sometimes found they had changed too much to come all the way back, that some part of them had stayed behind in France or Virginia or Korea, and the man who returned was a quieter, more interior version of the one who had left. Whatever the reason. And the reasons were as various as the towns themselves. The people left, slowly and then faster, the way snow melts, barely noticeably at first, just the edges softening and receding, and then all at once. Let me take you back to those streets now, but the streets are different this time. The Euryceritas reign. When the gold ran out, it is 1913 in Bodie, California. The population that peaked at 10,000 souls in the boom years has fallen, first to 5,000, then to 2,000, then to a few hundred, and is falling still. The stamp mill has gone quiet, not all at once. It went quiet the way a conversation goes quiet, gradually. Words becoming less frequent, silences growing longer, until the silence was simply the new thing, the new normal, and the sounds of before became something you had to try to remember. The main street looks the same mostly. The buildings are still standing. But look more closely now, and you will see the changes. The general store's window display hasn't been changed in months. The same goods in the same arrangement, a little more faded now, a little more dusty, like a still life painting that has spent too long in a room where the sun comes through the same window every afternoon. 2 of the saloons have closed. Their doors are shut and their shutters fastened, and through the gaps in the shutters you can see the dim shapes of chairs upended on tables. The universal signal of a place that is between things. A place that was open and might be open again, but is currently in the uncertain space of not quite decided. The hotel still operates, run by a woman of middle years who has decided to stay simply because she can't quite picture what leaving would look like. Where would she go? What would she carry? After 20 years, the line between herself and this place has blurred in ways that make separation seem more like amputation than relocation. So she stays. She cleans the rooms that no one is sleeping in, because cleaning them is what she does, because the alternative is to stop doing it, and she is not ready for what that would mean. Down at the end of the street, where the road curves around a large pine tree and begins its descent toward the valley below, a small boy is playing alone. He has a wagon. One of its wheels is loose and wobbles when he pushes it, making a rhythmic clicking sound, click, 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 that carries in the still air. He doesn't notice the quiet yet. He is 5 years old and he has never known Bodie any other way. The Bodie he knows is this Bodie, the quieter one, the one with more empty windows than lit ones. For him, this is just where he lives. For the adults, it is something else. For the adults who remember the other Bodie, the loud, crowded, warm-lit piano-playing, boot-stomping, coin-clinking other Bodie, the silence is loud in a different way. It is the loudness of absence. It is the sound of something missing. The wind moves down the main street like a slow visitor, touching each building as it passes. The assay office, the general store, the hotel, the shuttered saloons, touching each one gently, as if taking inventory, as if making note of what remains. The pine on the corner creaks. A door somewhere finds its voice and speaks softly in the wind. A piece of paper, old newspaper, its ink already half faded, lifts from the ground and turns slow cartwheels down the middle of the empty street before settling against the base of a building and going still. The silence comes back. It always comes back. The hurry. Dinner's still on the table, but Bodie's leaving was gradual. Bodie had time to pack. Some towns were not so fortunate. Some towns were abandoned so quickly that they left themselves behind. St. Elmo, Colorado. Come back with me to St. Elmo. The mines above the town closed in 1922, when the railroad that had been St. Elmo's lifeline discontinued its service into the valley. Without the railroad, there was no way to get the ore out efficiently. Without the ore going out, there was no money coming in. Without the money, there was no reason, practical reason, economic reason to stay. And so they left. But here is what makes St. Elmo different from a simple ghost town. Here is what makes it extraordinary. They left in a hurry, not the hurry of panic, no emergency, no fire or flood or disaster drove them out. Just the hurry of people who had decided to go and then discovered, in the actual process of going, that there were too many things to take and not enough wagon space, and some things would simply have to be left behind. And so they left the furniture, they left the dishes, they left the tools, still hanging on the workshop walls in the order they had always hung, largest to smallest, organized by function, the way a craftsman who respects his tools arranges them. They left the curtains in the windows, faded floral cotton, the pattern still visible in the protected centerfolds where the light hadn't reached. In some houses, they left food on the table, not because they forgot it, because they couldn't take it, because they were leaving. And the flour and the preserved vegetables and the jar of honey wouldn't survive the journey any better than could be eaten between here and wherever they were going. And besides, there was the weight limit of the wagon to consider, and the honey jar was heavy, and in the end, you leave what you can't take. But the honey jar stayed, sitting on a kitchen table in an empty house in St. Elmo, Colorado. The year the family left, and the year after that, and the year after that, the lid is still sealed tight, the way the woman of that house sealed every jar she put up, properly, carefully, the way her mother taught her, because a jar sealed properly keeps, and a jar sealed carelessly is a disappointment waiting to happen. The honey inside has crystallized over the years, gone cloudy and pale, no longer the amber liquid it was when the bees made it in the summer meadows above the tree line. But it is still honey, still sweet, still a small, perfect preserved piece of a summer that happened 100 years ago in a high mountain valley where the sun was warm and the bees worked the wildflowers, and a woman stood at a hot stove and sealed her jars and didn't yet know that she was sealing this particular summer, this particular quality of afternoon light, this particular life, sealing it in glass to keep it. She didn't know, but here it is, kept in another house just down the street, the white one with the porch that faces east to catch the morning light. A child's toy lies on the floor beside a bed. A small carved horse made from a single piece of pine wood by a father's patient hands over the course of a winter evening. The child who owned it is grown now. The child who owned it is old now, if still alive at all. The child who owned it does not remember leaving the horse behind. Or maybe does remember, maybe has carried that particular small guilt for a lifetime, the guilt of leaving something that deserved to come along, the guilt of a 5-year-old who had too many things to carry and chose wrong. The horse lies on its side. Its painted eye, a careful dark brown circle, lovingly applied by that same patient father on a different winter evening, looks at the ceiling that in the decades since has begun to sag in one corner where the roof above it has given way slightly to the weight of mountain winters. A small triangle of sky is visible through that gap, blue in the daytime, dark with stars at night. The horse has been watching that triangle of sky for 100 years. It is not sad about this. It is just a horse. But we, watching it, feel something, don't we? We feel the particular ache of things left behind, the particular tenderness we have toward objects that have witnessed more than their owners intended. The way a worn, smooth handle of an old tool can make you feel close to the person who wore it smooth, even though that person is gone, even though you never met them, even though all that connects you is the shape that a human hand makes when it grips something day after day after day. Nature reclimbs. The world comes back, and then nature. Nature, which had been waiting at the edges of these towns since the first nail was driven and the first board was laid. Nature, which is infinitely patient in the way that only things without calendars can be patient. Nature came back in. It always does. This is not a threat. This is a comfort when you understand it properly. The return of nature to a human-made space is not destruction, or not only destruction. It is something more like integration. Something more like the landscape saying quietly, without urgency, we can include this. We can work with this. We can work with this. We can make something new from what you have left here. And it does. In Bodie, the desert winds brought the sand. First, just a fine dust that settled on the windowsills and the floors in a thin, even layer, hardly noticeable, easily wiped away if there had been anyone to wipe it. Then more. The dust deepened into drifts along the baseboards, collecting in the corners of rooms the way snow collects in the corners of fences, filling the angles first, working outward from there. Then the cracks in the walls, always there, always part of the structure, but sealed and painted over and managed during the years of occupation. The cracks opened as the building settled and the paint dried and the wood moved with the seasons, opening and closing, breathing the way wood breathes. Through those cracks more dust whispered in, drifted in, blanketed the floors in a fine, pale layer that preserved everything it covered. The boot prints and the scuff marks in the place where the rocking chair's runners had worn 2 parallel grooves into the wood over the years of someone rocking in the evenings. The desert wind paused at those grooves, filled them gently, smoothed them over, as if erasing the evidence. Not maliciously, not deliberately, just the way wind smooths everything eventually. Just the way time works on surfaces, softening the sharp edges, filling the deep marks, making everything eventually level. In St. Elmo, it was the snow. Mountain snow is different from other snow. It falls in the kind of quantities that make you understand how the mountains were shaped, how the patient weight of winter after winter after winter can move stone, can carve valleys, can determine the course of rivers. It falls, and when it stops falling, it has changed the world around it, buried the summer landscape under something white and simple and absolute. The snow came through the gaps in the roofs of St. Elmo. It drifted through the broken windows, quietly, softly, without drama, and settled on the floors of the abandoned rooms, covering the toy horse, covering the honey jar on the table, covering the tools on their hooks and the curtains on their rods. A white interior landscape, a room-sized snowfield. And in the spring, when the snow melted, it left behind only the dampness and the slow, persistent work of moisture on wood, the darkening, the softening, the beginning of a return to earth. The trees came closest to the buildings, inch by inch, year by year, saplings in the cracks of the foundation, wildflowers in the gaps between boards, moss on every north-facing surface, soft and green and cool to the touch, ancient and adaptable, finding what it needs wherever it can. The grass grew through the floorboards in rooms where the floor had finally given way to the insistence of roots and moisture and time. The roots of the big pine tree at the end of the street, the one the road curved around, sent their slow, persistent tendrils under the street itself, under the packed earth that wagon wheels had hardened and decades of footsteps had compressed, under all of that, finding the water table below. And as the roots expanded, the road above them shifted, cracked. The cracks filled with the seeds that wind carries, dandelion and thistle and the various wildflowers that specialize in exactly this kind of opportunity, exactly this kind of opportunity, exactly this kind of opening. And they grew, quietly, without announcement, the way all the best things grow. In Elkmont, the process was gentler. The Smoky Mountains are not desert. They are one of the most biodiverse places in North America, a temperate rainforest that receives 60 to 80 inches of rain per year, a place where things grow with a kind of cheerful, unstoppable energy that makes even the most determined human structure look temporary by comparison. The cabins of Elkmont were not so much abandoned as they were slowly, gently, lovingly claimed. Vines found the porch railings and climbed them. Ferns established themselves along the foundation lines, their unfurling fronds in spring as precise and beautiful as any human-made ornament. The porches where people had spent their long summer evenings rocking and listening to the river, those porches began to lean and tilt and settle into the earth below them with the gradual, dignified surrender of very old things that have done what they were built to do and are now ready to rest. The river, just a few yards away, went on doing what it had always done. It didn't notice the change. The river had been here before the cabins. The river would be here after. The river simply was. And its sound, that clear, continuous, patient sound of water over stone, filled the valley the way it always had, filling the spaces that the human voices and the laughter and the rocking chairs and the long summer evenings had left behind, filling them completely, not leaving room for absence. Just the river, just the mountains, just the sound of the world doing what the world does when we step back far enough to let it. How are you feeling? Your body is very heavy now, isn't it? That is the good kind of heavy. The kind that means rest is working. That means the muscles that held tension all day are releasing it one by one, quietly. The way leaves release from a tree in autumn, without drama, without resistance. Just the natural letting go of something that has been held long enough. Let your jaw soften. Let your shoulders drop another half inch. Let your hands be still. The mountains are still here. The old towns are still here in the way that old things are still here. Changed, returned to the earth, but present still in the landscape, in the atmosphere, in the particular quality of light that falls over a place with a long and complicated history. We are going deeper now, into the shadow archive, into the quiet in the night and the stories that wait there, patient as stone, patient as mountain snow, patient as rivers that have been flowing since before any human thought to stand beside them and listen. We-V3, the Shadow Archive. There are stories in these old places. Not all of them are in the history books. Not all of them were written down in the neat black ink of official records. The birth certificates and deed transfers and mining claims and census entries that tell us the facts of what happened without quite capturing what it felt like to be there. Some of the stories live in a different way. They live in the particular way the light falls through a window that has been filmed with decades of dust and pollen and the patient work of spiders. The light coming through diffuse and golden, like light through gauze, like light through old amber, like the memory of light rather than light itself. They live in the stories that the people who stayed behind told each other on winter evenings, the stories that grew in the telling as stories do, accumulating details and significance with each passing year until the true thing and the told thing became impossible to separate. And perhaps the told thing was truer anyway, the way a photograph of a place is not the place, but somehow captures something about it that being there doesn't always give you access to. These are the Shadow Archive, the stories that live between the records. The accounts of things that might have happened, the legends, the ghost stories. The archive version, let me tell you about the woman at the window. This is a story that people in the mountains have told for a very long time, in different forms, in different versions, attached to different specific buildings and different specific windows, but always recognizably the same story at its core. There is a house. It is one of the abandoned ones. Of course it is. One of the houses that was left behind when the people left with its furniture and its curtains and its half-life of objects that didn't quite make the journey. And in the window of the upper floor, the window that faces east, the window that catches the first light of morning, sometimes in the hours just before dawn, there is a figure, a woman, standing very still, not doing anything in particular. Not gesturing, not calling out, not performing any of the dramatic behaviors that ghost stories typically require. Just standing, just watching, just present in the window the way anyone might be present in a window at 4 in the morning when sleep has come apart and the night is still dark. And there is something about the quality of the pre-dawn stillness that draws a person to a window without quite knowing why. People have been seeing this figure in one form or another for as long as the house has been empty. Local hikers who camp nearby sometimes wake at 3 or 4 in the morning, disturbed by some sound or some dream, or simply by the particular alertness that comes in the deep night hours, and glance toward the house and see her there, or think they see her, or see the particular arrangement of moonlight and window glass and old lace curtain that, in the darkness and the half-sleep of 3 in the morning, resolves itself into the shape of a figure and the figure into a woman, and the woman into the particular woman that this house, this story, this landscape has always seemed to hold. Who was she? The stories say different things. Some say she was the wife of a mine owner who couldn't bear to leave when the mine closed, who stayed as everyone else departed, who watched from that east window as the last wagon made its way down the road and around the bend and out of sight, who watched the dust settle behind it, who turned back to the empty house and went to bed and slept and woke and made her coffee and went to the east window to see if anyone was coming back yet. Other stories say she was a woman waiting for someone who had left for the war and didn't come back when the war ended, who waited at the window because the window faced the road that anyone approaching from the east would come along, and she was certain, in the way that people waiting for someone they love are certain beyond all evidence and reason, that he was simply delayed, that he was on his way, that any morning now she would see him coming up the road with his pack over his shoulder and his hat pushed back on his head, pushed down his stairs, before he reached a door. She is still at the window, still watching, still certain. There is something in these stories, something that, when you strip away the supernatural elements, when you hold just the human core of it, that is not frightening at all. It is, if anything, among the most recognizably human things imaginable. The refusal to stop watching, the refusal to stop waiting, the faith that keeps a person at a window in the dark hours because leaving the window would be a kind of giving up, and giving up is the one thing that this particular kind of love cannot do. We have all been at that window, haven't we? in one form or another, watching a road or a phone or a door, certain that what we are waiting for is coming, hoping we are right. And then there is the train, the phantom train of the mountains, a story told in many versions throughout the Appalachian region, and elsewhere too, wherever the railroads went and then were abandoned, wherever the tracks are still visible but unused, silver lines through the green or the desert or the snow that lead nowhere specific anymore, that have become monuments to their own former purpose. In the valley near Elkmont, on certain nights when the weather has a particular quality, when the air is still and the temperature has dropped just so, and the moon is in a specific phase, or maybe none of these things matter and it happens randomly, the way the best things happen, people hear it. The sound of a train, not loud, not dramatic, not the thundering, whistling, full-volume approach of an actual train at speed, just the sound. The distant rhythmic sound of a train moving through a valley at night, the particular pulse of it, the particular cadence that anyone who has ever heard a train from a distance in the dark knows immediately and viscerally, the way you know certain sounds before you can name them. Clack, 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 the rhythm of iron wheels on iron rails, in the specific time signature of a train moving at a moderate pace through terrain that requires attention. And then, sometimes, and not always, and never when you are specifically listening for it, the whistle. That sound, the train whistle in a mountain valley at night, is one of those sounds that does something to the inside of your chest. Something that is not quite sadness and not quite joy, and is perhaps most accurately described as longing. The particular feeling of being alive and aware of being alive and aware of all the time that has passed and all the time still to come, and the small, warm, utterly convincing reality of this moment, right now, this breath, this heartbeat, this particular darkness and this particular whistle fading into it. No train has run on those tracks in decades. The rails are still there, lifted in some stretches by the roots of trees that have grown through the ballast stones beneath them, but still recognizably rails, still unmistakably the thing they are. And on certain nights, the valley still remembers. The preservation, the time capsules let me tell you about the dry air. This is perhaps the most remarkable and least celebrated of the ghost town phenomena. More remarkable in its way than any story of phantom trains or watching women, because it is entirely real and entirely verifiable and entirely astonishing. The dry, high-altitude air of places like Bodie is one of the best preservatives in the natural world. Not as good as amber. Amber is extraordinary. Amber traps things perfectly. Amber gave us the stories of ancient insects frozen in golden resin for millions of years. But for the purposes of preserving the artifacts of human life, the dry desert and mountain air is remarkable. It removes moisture. And moisture, which seems so essential to life, is also the primary agent of decay. Without moisture, things simply persist. Wood dries to something harder and more stable than it was when it was living. Fabric, protected from direct sunlight and from the damp that would otherwise find it, fades and stiffens but holds together. You can still identify the pattern in a curtain from 1890, still see the flowers in the weave, still feel the particular texture of Victorian cotton under your fingers. Paper. Paper especially. In the buildings of Bodie, in the buildings of other high desert ghost towns where the conditions are right, paper documents from 150 years ago have been found in states of preservation that take archivists and historians by surprise. Letters, ledgers, personal diaries. Handwritten in ink that has faded from black to brown to the particular pale sepia of very old things, but still legible, still readable. Still, in the most literal sense, communicating across the entire distance of a century and a half. Let me read you one. Not a real one. I don't have a real one in front of me, but one assembled from the kinds of things that real ones say, from the fragments and the records and the sense of what life was like for people writing letters from the mountains in the 1880s. The paper is unfolded carefully, deliberately, and settled on a surface. It is thin paper, the kind that was expensive to use and so was used with care, every word earning its place on the page. It reads like this: "My dearest Margaret, I hope this letter finds you well, and that the winter has not been too hard on you and Mother in the valley. We have had considerable snow here in last weeks, the kind that comes down all day without stopping, as if the sky has decided to be generous about it. James says it is the worst he has seen since '79, though James says a good many things that are the worst he has seen since '79. The mine is doing well, better than well. Last week, we pulled out a vein that Hendrik says runs deeper than anything we have found before. We are all trying not to let hope run too far ahead of us, because we have been here long enough to know how quickly a promising vein can narrow and disappear. But it is hard not to feel it, Margaret. It is hard not to feel that something good is coming. Tell Mother that the scarf she sent arrived in perfect condition and that I wear it every evening and think of her hands that made it. The mountains here are beautiful in the snow. I know I've written this before, and I know it probably sounds sentimental from a grown man. But Margaret, there are evenings when the sky is so clear and the stars so numerous and the mountains so still and white that I feel something that I can only describe as gratitude. Gratitude so large it seems to fill the whole chest. Gratitude that I am alive and here and able to see this particular thing at this particular time. I hope to be home in the spring. All my love, Robert. Robert, his handwriting, in the original, which I am imagining for us, is steady in the first lines and slightly more hurried toward the end, as men's handwriting tends to be at the ends of letters, when the candle is burning down and it is late and tomorrow is an early start. The ink on the last few lines is slightly thicker, slightly darker, the pen pressed a little harder, the words coming faster than the nib can comfortably manage. He came home in the spring, or he didn't, or he came home and found things changed, or he came home and found things exactly the same and was surprised by how much he had changed. We don't know. The letter survived him, is what we know. The letter, in its envelope, in its drawer, in its room, in its building, in its ghost town. The letter survived him and survived the century and was found by a historian or a curious visitor or a park ranger doing an inventory of the contents of the old buildings. And here it is, Robert's words, Robert's handwriting, Robert's particular combination of practicality and wonder, the vein of silver and the scarf and the stars that filled his chest with gratitude. All of it here preserved by the dry air and the careful construction of a building that held together against the odds, waiting for us to find it and to read it and to feel, across all that distance, across all that time, the particular quality of one particular man's mind on one particular winter evening in the mountains. Here it is. I want to tell you about the child's toy now, not the horse from St. Elmo. Though that horse is still there, still lying on its side, still watching its triangle of sky. A different toy. This one is in Bodie, in a room that was probably a child's bedroom. The size of the bed frame suggests it, and the height of the hooks on the wall, and the particular way the window is positioned, so that it would have been the first thing a child saw from the pillow in the morning, a rectangle of mountain sky, changing with every season. The toy is a top, a wooden spinning top, painted in bands of red and yellow that have faded now to pink and cream, but which in their original brightness must have been very beautiful, very satisfying to watch spinning, those bands becoming a blur of warm color, red and yellow cycling together and apart and together again, as the top found its balance and sang its brief, high, perfect song. It is sitting on the windowsill, upright, as if someone placed it there, which someone did, once. Set it on the windowsill in the afternoon light to look at it, perhaps, or to feel the round smoothness of it in the palm before setting it down to spin later, and then left. And the top remained, standing on the windowsill for 100 years. The afternoon light that falls through that window in the summer months. The particular angle of it, the way it strikes the top at about 2 o'clock each afternoon and holds it in a column of gold for about 45 minutes before moving on. That light has been touching this top every summer afternoon for 100 years. The top stands in its light, patient, ready to spin, waiting for a hand that is not coming, but here, present, perfectly, precisely here. We are in the deep hours now, the hours between midnight and dawn, when the night is most itself, the hours when the mountains are most purely what they are, not backdrop to human activity, not scenery for human eyes, just mountains, old beyond comprehension, patient beyond patience, their stone and their trees and their ancient rivers going about the business of being mountains with complete, unhurried indifference to the hour or the season or the century. Your breathing is slowed. If you are still awake, you are at the edge. The edge is a good place to be. The edge is where waking becomes sleeping without you noticing the exact moment of transition, where one thing becomes another thing through a process so gradual and so natural that there is no seam between them. Let yourself be at the edge. The words will continue. You don't need to follow every word. Let the words become sound. Let the sound become texture. Let the texture become the thing you are resting in, the way the mountains rest in the dark, present, solid, unhurried, exactly what they are. The old towns are quiet around us. The buildings stand. The toy top stands on the windowsill. The honey jar sits on the table. The letter waits in its envelope, in its drawer. The woman may or may not be at the window. The train may or may not have whispered its way through the valley. The mountains do not concern themselves with these questions. The mountains simply are, and we are here, and the night is here, and the crickets are here slower now, their song a little deeper in this coolest hour before the dawn. The darkness outside the windows of the old buildings is absolute. No street lights, there haven't been for 100 years. No car headlights on the road. The road that the wagons traveled has become something for the earth to reclaim, and it has done so with characteristic thoroughness. Just the moonlight when the moon is up. Just the stars when the clouds allow. Just the particular darkness of places that have returned to the natural order of things. The order that existed before we arrived with our lamps and our fires and our need to push back the dark. The natural darkness is not threatening. The natural darkness is ancient. It is the darkness that the first humans looked into and told stories about. Stories that became constellations, became mythology, became the shared interior landscape of our entire species. It is the darkness that your ancestors slept in every night of their lives. Your body knows this darkness. Your nervous system was built for it. The dark is not danger. The dark is rest. The dark is the world with its eyes closed. The deeper mound stories. There is something else about these mountains that the history books don't always mention. Something that sits underneath the stories of gold and silver and logging and the summer camps of the wealthy. Something older than any of that. Something that was here long before the first wagon train made its way through the mountain passes. The Cherokee people called these mountains Shekinah. It means place of blue smoke. Look at the Great Smoky Mountains on any morning, summer or winter, wet season or dry, and you will understand immediately why. The mountains release a natural mist, a blue-gray vapor that rises from the trees in the early hours and hangs in the valleys and along the ridges like something the mountains are exhaling, like breath made visible in cold air. It is not actually smoke. It is the volatile organic compounds released by the billions of trees on those slopes, a kind of chemical conversation between the forest and the sky, a language older than any human language. A communication that has been happening for millions of years and will continue long after every human name for these mountains is forgotten. But smoke is a good word for it. Smoke suggests warmth, suggests presence, suggests that something alive is here, something breathing, something in the ongoing process of being itself in the world. The Cherokee had lived in these mountains for centuries before the first European explorers arrived. They had names for every peak and every valley and every river and every bend in every river. They had stories for all of it, stories that explained how the mountains came to be, how the rivers found their shapes, why certain animals live where they live and behave as they behave. In their understanding, the mountains were not scenery, they were not resources, they were not backdrop, they were relatives. Every tree and stone and stream was part of the same web of relationship that included the Cherokee themselves, a web so intricate and so ancient that pulling any thread of it would change the whole. The way pulling a single thread from a woven cloth changes the tension of every other thread, the whole cloth shifting and adjusting to account for the absence. This way of seeing the world, this understanding that everything is connected, that nothing stands alone, that the health of the mountains and the rivers and the forests is the health of the people who live within them. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is an ecological fact that modern science has spent the last 100 years slowly rediscovering. The Cherokee knew it. They have always known it. The mountains remember this too, in the way that mountains remember things, not in words or stories or any form that a human could directly access, but in the shapes of things, in the way water finds its way to certain valleys and not others, in the way certain species of tree grow in certain places and nowhere else, in the intricate, invisible, utterly real architecture of a living system that has been building itself for hundreds of millions of years. When you stand in the Smoky Mountains and feel that particular thing, that feeling that is not quite peace but is related to peace, that feeling of something large and steady and patient that exists entirely outside your own small urgencies. You are feeling the weight of all of that. You are feeling the mountains remember, and something in you remembers too. Something older than your name, older than your worries, older than the particular year and day and moment you find yourself in. Something in the oldest part of your nervous system. The part that was shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of human beings living in landscapes like this one, in mountains and forests and river valleys, under open skies full of stars. That part of you recognizes this. That part of you relaxes. That part of you knows you are in a safe place. You are in an ancient place. You are held by something much larger than yourself, and that something is not indifferent. It is not cruel. It is simply vast and patient and ongoing. You can rest here. The mountains will hold you. They have been holding things for a very long time. They are very good at it. Let yourself be held now. Let the tension in your face soften, the small muscles around your eyes and your jaw releasing, the expression that the day requires of you falling away like a mask at the end of a long performance. The performance is done. The audience is gone. You can put down the mask. Let your shoulders settle. Let your arms be heavy. Let your legs sink into the surface beneath them, heavy and warm and perfectly still. You are doing beautifully. The night is around you, and the mountains are around the night, and the stars are above the mountains, and the whole vast, patient, ancient system of things is going about its eternal business while you rest. There is nothing required of you right now, not one single thing. More mountain histories. The forgotten seasons. Let me tell you about the spring in these mountains, because every story of abandonment and return is also a story of seasons, and the seasons in the Great Smokies are among the most extravagant on earth. The spring comes slowly. It does not arrive all at once, the way spring arrives in flatter places. One warm week following a cold one, the definitive shift from one state to another. In the mountains, spring creeps upward from the valleys. First, the lowest elevations warm, and the wildflowers appear down there. The hepatica and the trout lily and the bloodroot, pushing up through the leaf litter that has been accumulating since the previous autumn, finding the weak March light enough to work with. Then slowly, week by week, as the temperature climbs, the spring moves upward along the slopes. A botanist named Arthur Stuepke, who spent decades studying the plants of the Great Smoky Mountains, once described the Appalachian Spring as an event that takes months to complete, beginning at the lowest elevations in late February and reaching the highest peaks only in May or even June. He called it a wave of spring, a wave that rolls slowly up the slopes of the mountains, carrying with it the bloom of every wildflower in sequence. First the ones that need the early cold light, then the ones that prefer warmer temperatures, then the ones that wait until the tree canopy closes overhead and the forest floor is in dappled shade rather than direct sun. There are over 1,500 species of flowering plants in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. 1,500 in a space of roughly 500,000 acres, which sounds large, and is large but is still finite, still bounded by the ridgelines and the adjacent valleys, still a specific place on a specific map. 1,500 species of flowering plants. This is more species than exist in the entire northeastern United States. This richness, this extraordinary, almost unbelievable diversity is the result of several things working together over millions of years. The age of the mountains, which are among the oldest on Earth. The range of elevation, which creates a range of climates from subtropical at the base to near boreal at the highest peaks. The moisture, that 60 to 80 inches of annual rainfall, which keeps everything growing. The fact that these mountains run north-south, which meant that during the ice ages, plants could retreat southward along the ridges as the glaciers advanced, and then return northward when they retreated, surviving what did not survive in the flatter landscapes to the north and east, where the ice scraped everything clean. The mountains were a refuge for the plants and the animals that live among them. They are still a refuge, a place where things survive that have not survived elsewhere. A place where the past is preserved in the most literal possible sense, not in documents or photographs or museum cases, but in the living landscape itself, in the species of salamander that lives in these streams and nowhere else on Earth, in the ancient trees that grow on the highest ridges, trees so old and so unchanged that the scientists who study them are still learning what they are. The old towns sit in this landscape, surrounded by it, held by it. The wildflowers grow through the floorboards in the spring. The salamanders find their way into the cool darkness beneath the abandoned buildings in the summer. The birds nest in the eaves. The bears come through occasionally, unhurried and magnificent, the absolute owners of this landscape in a way that no human being has ever quite managed to be. And the mountains rise above it all, blue and grey in the morning mist, carrying their long history in their very stones, in the particular mineral composition of those ancient rocks, in the way they hold and release water, in the shapes that a billion years of weather has made of them, patient, present, permanent by any human measure, yours to rest in. We fall, the eternal night. Let me tell you something about time. Not in the way of lectures or lessons, just something to hold quietly, the way you hold a stone that has been in the sun, just for the warmth of it, just for the satisfying weight. These towns, these beautiful, broken, preserved returning to earth towns, they show us something that is very hard to see when you're in the middle of your own life, in the middle of your own noise and rush and importance. They show us that everything passes, not as a warning, not as a threat, as a comfort. Everything passes. The urgency that kept you awake last night will pass. The problem that felt unsolvable this morning, time is already working on it. The way water works on stone, the way roots work on pavement, the way mountains work on everything, patiently, certainly, without drama. The boom towns knew this. Or they didn't know it exactly. They were too busy being boom towns to know it, but they demonstrated it. The way a life demonstrates things that it doesn't necessarily know it's demonstrating. They bloomed, they thrived, they filled with the sound and the heat and the beautiful, complicated, urgent human business of being alive. And then they quieted. And the mountains, which had been here before them and which remain here still, simply included them. Included the buildings and the streets and the toy top on the windowsill and the letter in the drawer. Included all of it the way a river includes a stone that falls into it, closing back around it, making it part of the current, part of the flow. Nature always returns. This is not loss. This is the longest, slowest, most patient form of welcome home. The philosophicity of time. Imagine for a moment the mountain itself, not the towns on its slope, not the roads that wind up its sides, just the mountain. 400 million years old, approximately. 400 million years of snow and rain and the slow cracking of frost in winter and the slow warming of summer, of trees growing on its sides and falling and becoming soil and growing again, of rivers finding their way from its heights down to the valleys, of the particular quality of light on its peaks changing with each season, with each century, with each geological age. 400 million years. And in that time, a geological eye blink really, barely a moment in the mountain's long attention, a few thousand human beings came and built some buildings and dug some holes and played pianos and wrote letters and went home. And the mountain noticed, if mountains notice things, and the mountain watched, if mountains watch, and the mountain, if mountains feel anything, felt perhaps a kind of fond attention for these brief, bright, noisy, hopeful, heartbreaking visitors who came and went. The mountain is still here. It will be here when all of us, and all the people we love, and all the people they love, are also past. This sounds sad, but it isn't. It is the most freeing thing in the world if you let it be. If you let the mountain show you what it has always known, that each individual moment, each individual life, each individual day in its specific, particular, unrepeatable quality is both tiny and enormous, both brief and complete, both impermanent and absolutely real while it is happening. Right now, you are absolutely real. This moment, your breath, your body, the weight of you against whatever surface you are resting on is absolutely real. It is also already becoming the past, the way all moments do, the way the boomtowns did, the way the mountains themselves will do eventually in the long patience of geological time. And this is okay. This is more than okay. This is the nature of things, and the nature of things is beautiful. The long dreaming of mountaineers. The mountains dream differently than we do. Their dreams are long, geological, measured in the slow movements of continents and the patient rise and fall of entire ecosystems. Their dreams are made of the weight of accumulated snow and the pressure of deep roots finding water and the slow drift of tectonic plates beneath them. The whole vast machinery of a living planet working itself out over timescales that make our human lives look like the briefest possible flicker of light. And yet, within those vast dreams, the small things are preserved. The footprint of a dinosaur in ancient mud that became stone. The perfect impression of a leaf from a tree species that has been extinct for 50 million years, pressed into shale by the weight of all the time above it. The particular arrangement of mineral crystals in a rock face that tells, for those who know how to read it, the precise story of a volcanic event that happened 300 million years ago. The temperature, the pressure, the speed with which the magma cooled. The mountains remember everything. In their stone and their soil and their ancient branching rivers, they hold the record of every single thing that has happened to them since the beginning, including us. Including the roads we cut into their sides, and the mines we opened in their bellies, and the trees we took from their slopes, and the buildings we put up in their valleys and then left behind. Including the laughter of children in dusty streets in 1878. Including the woman who sealed her honey and didn't know she was sealing a summer. Including the man who wrote by candlelight about gratitude and stars. Including you. Right now. This moment, your weight, your breath, your particular quality of presence in this particular place on this particular night, the mountains are holding this too, adding it to the archive, filing it alongside all the other moments that have happened in their presence since the first living thing pulled itself out of the water and found that the land could support it. You are part of this. You are not separate from this. You are in it. You are it. This is not a small thing. This is everything. And the everything of it is so vast and so complete that there is no room in it for the small anxieties and the urgent worries and the circling thoughts that make the nights long sometimes. There is only this breath, this night, this mountain, this darkness full of stars that are themselves full of all the time that has passed since the beginning of everything. Rest in it. You are held. The modern sen, stars and empty streets. Imagine visiting these places today, not in a daydream, or a daydream that feels real, a daydream that carries the particular weight of actual experience. You are there. It is evening. You have driven up a long mountain road, the kind of road that requires your full attention, where the curves come quickly and the drop-offs are steep, and the reward for your attention is the occasional glimpse of valley below, far down, tiny and perfect, like a model of a valley, the kind of thing a child might construct with careful hands. You have parked at the edge of what was once the main street. You get out of the car. The silence is the first thing, not the absence of sound. The presence of natural sound, which is its own kind of silence compared to the noise of human activity. Wind, insects, the distant suggestion of water. You stand at the edge of the old street and you look. The buildings. Some still standing, more or less upright, their walls intact, their windows dark, their rooflines softened by years of mountain weather, but still recognizable as the shapes that human hands made. Others have given more ground to time. A wall tilted inward, a roof collapsed, the interior open now to the sky, so that the building has become something between a building and a ruin and a garden. The distinction between inside and outside no longer meaningful in the way it was when people lived there. You walk slowly. Your footsteps are quiet on what remains of the street. Above you, the sky is doing something extraordinary, because here, far from any city, far from any town of significant size, the sky is doing what the sky has always been doing, and that we rarely get to see. It is being a sky. A full, actual populated sky. The stars are not decorative. They are not scattered. They are dense. They are layered. Not a flat surface, but a depth. A depth that goes back and back and back and keeps going. More stars behind the stars you can see. The galaxy itself visible as a pale band from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way in its full and humbling glory. You stand in the old street and you look up, and you feel you cannot help but feel very small. And somehow, mysteriously, very held. Very much part of something. Something much larger than yourself, much older, much more patient. Something that includes these broken buildings, and the people who built them, and the mountains around them, and the stars above. And you, standing here in this moment looking up, you are part of it. You are not separate from this. You are in it. You are it. A child, long ago, played in the street you are standing in. A woman sealed a jar of honey and put it on a table. A man wrote a letter by candlelight and mentioned that the stars made him feel gratitude. A piano played 3 or 4 simple notes, and the notes found their way out through the saloon doors and into the mountain air and dispersed slowly into the larger silence that was always there, that was always waiting to receive them. And the mountains listened. They are still listening. To you, now, standing in the starlight, breathing, held by the ancient dark. The river remembers. There is one more thing I want to tell you before the night is complete. Something about the little river in Elkmont. Something about rivers in general, and about this river in particular, and about what it means to be a thing that simply continues. The little river has been flowing through that valley for a long time, longer than any human has lived there, longer than any human has lived there. Longer than any human name for it, longer than any story about it, longer than the mountains themselves in a certain sense, because the river is older than the current shape of the mountains, and as the mountains rose and shifted and eroded, the river simply adjusted, cutting new channels when the old ones were blocked, finding new paths to the valley below, always moving, always seeking, always finding its way to the lower ground where water naturally goes. When the loggers came to Elkmont, the river was there. When the wealthy families built their summer cabins, the river was there. When the last family packed up their last summer and drove down the mountain road and didn't come back, the river was there. When the National Park Service began the long process of deciding what to do with the old cabins, preserve them or remove them, restore them or let them continue their return to the earth, the river was there through all of it. All of those conversations, all of that deliberation, all of that human weighing of values and priorities and histories. The river was not weighing anything. The river was just flowing. The river was doing what rivers do, which is simply and continuously and without drama or commentary moving from the high places to the lower places, over and around and through whatever stands in its way, making it sound that clear, cold, continuous sound of water in motion, day and night and day, through every season and every decade and every century, regardless of what is happening on its banks. The river doesn't need to understand what it's doing. It doesn't need to decide. It doesn't need to weigh. It doesn't need to worry about whether it's doing it right or doing it fast enough or doing it in the way that other rivers would approve of. It just flows. There is something in this that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I want to offer it to you now, in this quiet hour, as something to carry into sleep. You don't always need to understand what you're doing. You don't always need to decide, to weigh. to worry about whether you're doing it right. Sometimes you can just flow, not passively, not indifferently, but with the kind of purposeful ease that the river has, the ease of something that knows what it is and what it is for, and does that thing without agonizing over it. The river knows it is a river. It knows its purpose is to move the water from the high places to the lower ones, and it does this always completely with all of itself. You are a person, and your purpose right now in this moment is to rest, to let the day be finished, to let the night have its proper weight and darkness and quiet, to let your body and your mind do the repair and renewal work that they can only do when you release the grip of waking consciousness and let sleep come. That is your purpose right now. The river knows how to be a river. You know how to sleep. Let yourself do it. The final turn of the heart. The night is very deep now. In the old towns, in the mountain valleys, in the spaces between the abandoned buildings where the wildflowers have established themselves and the trees have found their footing, and the whole apparatus of the living world has quietly and thoroughly resumed its occupation. The night is very deep. The stars have moved, not obviously, not in any way you would notice from minute to minute, but the great wheel of the night sky has been turning since you lay down, and the constellations that were in the east when you closed your eyes are now overhead, and the ones that were overhead are in the west now, and the ones that were overhead are in the west now, and the ones that were in the west have set, gone below the horizon, gone to light other parts of the world where people are just beginning their days. The temperature has dropped. The coldest hour is the one just before dawn. The hour the accumulated warmth of the previous day has been thoroughly exhaled into the sky, and the heat of the coming day has not yet arrived. The hour when the dew forms on every surface, when the grass and the leaves and the old weathered wood of the ghost town buildings are covered in tiny droplets of water, each one catching and holding the starlight for just a moment before it falls or evaporates. Everything is wet with stars. Everything is held in the cold, still, perfect hinge of the night. In the old buildings, in the quiet rooms, the objects that have waited through 100 such nights are waiting through this one. The toy top on the windowsill, the honey jar on the table, the letter in its drawer, the carved horse still on its side, still watching its triangle of sky, which is full of stars now, at this hour, the window perfectly positioned to frame a particular arrangement of the night sky that the original builders of that house couldn't have known they were framing. But there it is, a window to the stars, open to the night, patient as stone, patient as a mountain, and you are patient too now, aren't you? Your mind has quieted. The thoughts that wanted to circle and circle, the lists and the worries and the unfinished conversations, they have settled. The way silt settles to the bottom of a still pool, the way everything settles when the motion stops and the stillness is given time to be what it is. You have given the stillness time, and the stillness has received you. The mountains are receiving you. The night is receiving you. There is nothing left to do. There is nothing left to think. There is only this breathing, this darkness, this ancient and patient and completely indifferent to your worries presence of the mountains and the stars and the rivers and the old quiet buildings standing in the moonlight, holding their 100 years of stories, waiting for morning the way they have waited for, every morning for 100 years, without urgency, without anxiety, without anything except the simple and complete fact of being here. Be here, just now, just this breath, and then the next one, and then you won't need to count them anymore. You won't need to do anything anymore. The night will carry you the rest of the way. The mountains will carry you. The river in its valley will carry you. All the patient, ancient, breathing things will carry you through to morning. And morning will come, the way it always does. Not with drama, not with announcement, just with the first pale lightening of the sky in the east, the stars fading one by one as the light returns, the birds beginning their first tentative sounds, the world warming degree by degree, the dew lifting off the grass and the old buildings and rising into the air, which is how water travels, endlessly recycling itself, falling and rising into the air. Which is how water travels, endlessly recycling itself, falling and rising in dand, that larger thing. To bounderd, but indeed to understand that larger thing, bit more defect, it can about a bit, like you, like all of us, part of something larger, carried, safe, at rest. The Great Smoky Mountains are dreaming their long geological dreams. The old towns are sleeping in their valleys. The toy top waits on the windowsill. The honey jar holds its crystallized summer on the kitchen table. The letter rests in its envelope, in its drawer, patient as everything that has ever been written with love, and sealed and sent towards someone who is missed. The woman at the window, if she is there tonight, is watching the road with the particular patience of someone who has been watching for a very long time and has made a kind of peace with the watching, who has found that the watching itself, over the years, has become its own form of presence, its own form of love. The vigil transformed into something quieter and deeper and harder to name than waiting. The train, if it moves tonight through the mountain valley, moves so quietly that only the valley itself can hear it, only the old rails still sleeping in the earth, the ballast stones still remembering the weight that passed over them for decades, the particular resonance of iron on iron that the valley holds, in the same way it holds the sound of the river and the sound of the wind through the trees. Everything is held, and you are held too, completely, safely, in the oldest, most patient hands imaginable. Let them hold you. You are done for tonight. You have done enough. You have done enough. The mountains know this. The night knows this. And now, finally, softly, completely, you can know it too. Good night. Good night. The mountains are still here. The stars are still here. The river is still flowing, will always be flowing, has always been flowing. And you are resting. You are resting. You are resting. You are resting. There is a particular kind of person that the mountains made, not the prospectors and the merchants and the mine owners. Those people have their stories told often enough, their names written in the deed records and the newspaper accounts and the thick leather ledgers of the assay offices. No, the people I am thinking of are the others. The ones who came to these mountains not for gold or silver or timber, but for something harder to name and harder to find and once found, harder to leave behind. They came for the mountains themselves. There was a woman named Sarah Cole who arrived in the Smoky Mountains in the spring of 1903, traveling alone, which was not something women did in 1903, at least not women who had anywhere else to go and anyone else to be with. She had left a teaching position in Knoxville, a respectable position, a comfortable position, a position that her family had been quietly proud of in the particular way that families are proud of things that confirm their sense of who they are. She left it on a Tuesday morning in March. She packed one trunk and arranged for it to be sent ahead, and she walked to the train station and bought a ticket to the end of the line, which in those days was a small depot at the edge of the mountains where the narrow gauge railroad stopped and the mountains began, and you had to continue on foot or on horseback if you wanted to go further. She wanted to go further. She walked for 2 days, following the river upstream the way the old Cherokee paths followed it, the way water itself follows the logic of landscape, always seeking the lowest point, always finding the route that requires the least resistance. She stopped at farmhouses to ask for water and for direction, and the mountain people who answered their doors and found this solitary woman with her sensible shoes and her slightly too urban coat and her quiet, determined eyes, they pointed her in the right direction and gave her water and sometimes bread and did not ask too many questions, because the mountains attract a certain kind of person and the mountain people have learned over generations to recognize that kind of person and to respect their privacy. She found a small cabin near the headwaters of a tributary of the Little River. It belonged to an old man named Elias who had been living alone in it for 30 years and who had no particular objection to renting out the room at the back in exchange for the cooking and the company, both of which he had been lacking for longer than he liked to admit. Sarah Cole lived in that cabin for 11 years. She taught in the mountain schools, small one-room buildings where children of all ages sat together and learned from the same teacher the same lessons at the same time, an arrangement that produces a particular kind of education, one that is less efficient by modern measures and more human by any other. She knew every family in the surrounding hollows and ridges within a year. She knew which children were quick and which needed more time and which were brilliant in ways that the standard curriculum simply had no category for. Brilliant in the ways of mountain living, in the reading of weather and animal behavior, and the particular language of a landscape that is always communicating with those who know how to listen. She wrote letters home to her family in Knoxville. Her family wrote back asking when she was coming home. She wrote that she was home. Her family stopped asking after a while. The mountains will do that to you. They will reorganize your understanding of what home means, quietly and without your permission, until one day you realize that the place you came from has become the place you are from, and the place you are is the place you belong. And these are not the same thing, and the difference between them is everything. Sarah Cole is not famous. She does not appear in any history book that I have ever read. Her name is in the census records for the mountain townships where she lived, listed in her occupation as teacher and in her status as unmarried, which the census taker wrote with a particular careful neutrality of someone recording a fact that his society considered a deficiency, but that the woman in question clearly did not. She is in the mountains, not in any supernatural sense, though who can say in these old places what persists and what doesn't. She is in the mountains, the way everyone who has ever loved a place deeply enough is in that place, woven into its fabric, part of its particular quality of being, part of the specific texture of what it means to be in that valley on a spring morning when the wildflowers are coming up through the leaf litter and the river is running high and clear with snowmelt and the mountains are exhaling their blue smoke into the pale morning sky. She is there. You might feel her if you are the right kind of person, if you are the kind of person who stays still long enough to feel anything at all. There was also a man named Jonas Whitfield who had no particular reason to be in the mountains and every reason in the world to leave and never did either of those things. He arrived in the Bodie area in 1879 at the height of the gold rush with the same dreams as everyone else, or what he told himself were the same dreams as everyone else. But Jonas Whitfield was not, at his core, a man who cared particularly about gold. He was a man who cared particularly about gold. He was a man who cared about rocks, not the gold in them, not the silver or the copper or the quartz, or any of the marketable minerals that brought other men to these mountains. The rocks themselves, their colors and their textures and their ages and the stories locked inside their mineral structure about what the world had been like when they were formed. He had no formal education in geology. Geology as a formal discipline was barely 100 years old in 1879, but he had been picking up rocks and looking at them closely since he was 5 years old, and he had been reading whatever he could find about them since he learned to read, and he had the kind of native intelligence and obsessive attention that, in combination, can approximate formal education and sometimes surpass it. He arrived to mine for gold. He stayed to look at the rocks. He kept a collection in the back room of the boarding house where he lived, hundreds of specimens, carefully labeled in his cramped, precise handwriting, each one wrapped in cloth and stored in a wooden box that he had made himself over a series of evenings when the other miners were in the saloon. The landlady of the boarding house tolerated the rocks with the particular long-suffering patience of a woman who has learned that men will be peculiar in their own ways and that the peculiarities of a man who collects rocks are preferable to the peculiarities of men who collect debts or drink or grudges. She even came to find it interesting eventually. She would come to the door of his room sometimes and watch him work, cleaning a specimen with a small brush, holding it to the lamplight, recording something in his notebook with the focused expression of a person for whom the entire world has narrowed to the object in their hands and the words they are trying to find for what they see. He found in the rocks around Bodie evidence of volcanic activity from millions of years before any living thing had set foot on that particular piece of earth. He found fossils, plant fossils mostly, pressed into shale with the delicacy of something that had been placed there with great care rather than buried by the random violence of geological upheaval. He found crystals of such perfect geometry that he would spend an entire evening just looking at them, turning them in the light, trying to understand how something so precise and so beautiful could have been made by a process with no maker, no intention, no aesthetic sensibility. And then gradually coming to understand that this was exactly the point, that the beauty was not made but inherent, not imposed but emerguous, produced these exact forms as nedibly as a river produces the curve of its bend or a mountain produces the angle of its slope, that the laws of physics and inevitably as inedibilate. Jonas Whitfield died in 1921 at the age of 73, still in the mountains. His rock collection was donated to a university in California, where most of it sits in storage, carefully labeled in his cramped handwriting, waiting for someone to care about it the way he cared about it. But some of the rocks are still in the mountains. The ones he couldn't carry, the ones too large or too heavy or simply too much a part of the landscape to be removed from it. He marked some of them, a small scratch notation in the corner of a particularly interesting face of stone, or a piece of colored string tied around a feature he intended to come back to. The string is gone. The scratch notations have been worn by 100 years of weather to near invisibility. But the rocks are there, exactly where they have always been, exactly as they were when Jonas Whitfield knelt in front of them and felt, for the 10,000th time in his life, the particular and irreplaceable feeling of a person in the presence of something that exceeds their understanding and is not diminished by exceeding it, but rather more beautiful for being inexhaustible. The rocks are there. They will be there long after every other trace of human presence in these mountains is gone. They will be there when the mountains themselves are gone, ground down by the patient work of ice and water and wind into the plains that will eventually replace them. Patient, unchanging, remembering everything. The seasons of abandonment. Every ghost town has its own particular season of leaving. Not the calendar season, though those are interesting too, and we will get to them, but the emotional season, the particular quality of the time in which the leaving happened, the atmosphere and the weather of departure. Bodie's leaving was a long autumn. It stretched over decades, that leaving, beginning in the early 1900s and continuing in slow increments through the 1910s and the 1920s and the 1930s, the population declining like a tree losing its leaves, not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily and inevitably, the town becoming more bare with each passing year, more sparse, more open to the weather. An autumn town. There is a quality to autumn that is not sad exactly, but is saturated with something, saturated with the awareness of change, with the particular heightened beauty that comes from knowing that this brightness, this exact gold light on the turning leaves, this exact quality of afternoon is temporary, is already leaving even as you stand in it, is precious precisely because it will not last. Bodie had that quality in its declining years. The people who stayed through the long, slow leaving of the others described it later in terms that sound like autumn, the particular clarity of the air, the way sounds carried farther in the quiet, the heightened attention to small things that happens when the larger life of a place has contracted and what remains is more intimate, more present, more carefully itself. A man named James S. Amyntas Kane, the son of a banker, a man who had grown up in Bodie when it was full, and who stayed as it emptied, wrote in his later years about walking the main street on a winter morning in 1930, when the town's population was down to a few dozen souls and the air was so still you could hear your own heartbeat. He wrote about the quality of that stillness. He wrote that it was not an empty stillness, but a full one, full of everything that had been there before. Full of the echoes of the voices and the footsteps and the piano music and the hammer strikes and the children's laughter. All of it still present in some way he couldn't quite articulate, the way a room still holds the warmth of a fire long after the fire has gone out, the way a glass still tastes of wine long after the wine is drunk. He wrote that he loved the town more in that emptiness than he had loved it in its fullness, because in the fullness there had been no room for this particular quality of attention. There had been no room to simply stand in the middle of the street on a cold winter morning and feel the whole weight and history of the place settle over you like a garment. There had always been something else to do, somewhere else to be, someone else to talk to. In the emptiness, there was finally room for the place itself. St. Elmo's leaving was a sudden winter, here in one moment, gone in the next, or not quite that sudden, but sudden enough. The closing of the railroad in 1922 functioned like the first hard freeze of autumn, the signal that the season has definitively changed, that what was possible before is no longer possible, that the time for growing things is over, and the time for going inside has begun. And the people went inside. Inside their wagons, inside their decisions, inside the complicated arithmetic of what to take and what to leave and where to go from here, and how to explain to children who have never known another home that home is now somewhere else, somewhere they haven't been yet, somewhere they will have to learn. The children were the hardest part. There are accounts from women who made that leaving in 1922 and 1923, and almost all of them mention the children. The children who wanted to take things that couldn't be taken, the dog's favorite toy, the collection of interesting rocks from the creek, the jar of tadpoles that someone had been watching develop over the summer and didn't want to leave before they became frogs. One woman named Martha Engels wrote in her journal that her son Thomas, who was 8 years old, spent the entire journey down the mountain looking backward, not forward, watching the town recede until the road curved and the valley closed behind them and there was nothing to see anymore. He didn't cry. He was 8 years old and he understood that crying was not going to change anything. But he watched until there was nothing left to watch, and then he turned forward and didn't speak for the rest of the day. Martha Engels wrote this down because she felt it was important. Because she felt that someone should know that a child had looked back at his home until it disappeared. That a child had watched a whole life go around a curve in the road and out of sight, and that he had done this without crying, which Martha felt was more heartbreaking than crying would have been. She was right. And we know this. We know this across the 100 years between her writing and our reading, across all the distance and all the time and all the change. We know exactly what it felt like to be Thomas, looking back. We have all been Thomas. We have all watched something we loved go around a curve in the road. We have all turned forward eventually, because there is nothing else to do. And we have all carried that looking back with us, quietly, for a very long time. The animals WHO stayed when the people left. The animals came back. Not all at once. It took years, decades in some cases, but steadily, inevitably, with the particular patience that animals have, which is different from human patience, in that it is not patience at all, but simply the absence of impatience, the absence of a timeline, the absence of any sense that things should be different from how they are. The birds were first. They had never entirely left. Birds are not easily discouraged by human activity, and many species had learned to coexist with the boom towns, nesting in the eaves of the buildings and foraging in the kitchen gardens and the waste piles, and the horse paddocks with the pragmatic adaptability that birds are so good at. But when the people left, and the noise and the movement and the smoke and the food scraps and the horses and the dogs all left with them, the birds had to adjust again, and they did. Within a few years of the final leaving of the human population in most ghost towns, the bird populations had shifted dramatically. The species that preferred human proximity, the house sparrows and the starlings and the pigeons and all the other opportunists who have spent 10,000 years learning to live alongside us, those species declined or disappeared. And the species that had been keeping their distance, the mountain bluebirds and the white-throated swifts and the various hawks and owls that nest in cliff faces and tall trees, those species moved in. The buildings became nesting sites. The broken windows and the gaps in the walls and the collapsed roofs created exactly the kinds of sheltered, elevated spaces that cavity nesting birds prefer. Barn owls moved into the upper floors of the hotels. Prairie falcons nested on the ledges of the assay offices. Swallows filled the old saloons with their quick, precise flight and their particular liquid sound, a sound that is impossible to describe except as the sound of swallows, which is its own perfect category of sound, one of the most purely joyful sounds in the natural world. The night belonged to the owls. Great horned owls, which are among the most adaptable and the most widely distributed of the North American owls, claimed the ghost towns for themselves almost immediately. They nested in the old buildings and hunted the surrounding landscape and called to each other across the empty streets in the deep hours of the night. That deep, resonant, slightly theatrical hooting that has been inspiring stories about wisdom and mystery since the first human being looked up at a dark tree and heard a large bird asking a question in the dark. The owls are not asking questions. They are doing what owls do, communicating territory and availability and the various social signals that make up an owl's social life, which is less solitary than we tend to imagine, less mysterious, more domestic, more ordinary. But the sound of them in an empty town at night is not ordinary. The sound of an owl in an empty building, in a room where children once slept and adults once argued, and a woman once sealed her honey jars with the careful precision of love. The sound of an owl in that room is something that makes the hairs on your arms stand up and makes you feel the distance between then and now more sharply than almost anything else. The bears came later. Bears are cautious. Bears have long memories, and they remember that where there were people, there was danger, or if not danger, exactly, then complication, the need for wariness, the need to manage the encounter with care. It takes a few generations of bears for the memory of people in a place to fade enough for them to relax into it. But they came. Black bears, in the Smoky Mountains especially, came back into the valleys and the hollows where the logging camps had been and the summer cabins had been, and found them returning to the forest and claimed them for themselves with the peaceful authority of animals who know they belong somewhere. A bear moving through an abandoned cabin is an extraordinary thing to witness, not frightening. Not to someone watching from a safe distance, not to someone who understands that bears are not interested in people who are not between them and their food. Just extraordinary. Extraordinary in the particular way of things that remind you of the real scale of things, the real hierarchy of things, the real answer to the question of who this landscape ultimately belongs to. The bear moves through the old rooms with a curiosity that is entirely genuine and entirely unhurried. It investigates the remaining furniture, the tipped-over chairs and the collapsed shelves, with the thorough sniffing attention of the creature for whom smell is the primary sense, for whom the world is a dense and detailed text written in scent, the history of every animal that has passed through this space still present in the wood and the dust, readable, specific, layered. The bear reads the room, finds nothing of immediate interest, moves on. Leaves behind the particular evidence of its passing. A smear of mud on the doorframe, a single dark hair caught on a splinter of old wood, the pressed down grass outside the door where it paused for a moment before deciding to go in. Evidence of a visitor. Evidence that the world is ongoing, that life is ongoing, that the vacancy left by one kind of life is always inevitably, creatively filled by another. The mountain lions came too, eventually, in the places where they still exist, which in the eastern mountains is now a matter of hope more than certainty. The eastern cougar officially declared extinct in 2011. Though there are those who believe the mountains still hold a few, invisible and secretive and walking the old ridgelines at night, in the way they have walked them for thousands of years. Whether or not the mountain lions are still there in body, they are there in story. In the old stories of the Cherokee and in the stories of the mountain people who came after them, the farmers and the hunters and the women who kept their gardens and their preserving jars and their patient, practical, deeply rooted lives in the folds of the mountains. The mountain lion is in the landscape the way the stories are in the landscape. Present whether or not you can see it directly, felt in the quality of the air on a certain kind of night, felt in the particular alertness that the forest has sometimes, the sense that everything is paying attention to something you can't see. It is a good feeling, that alertness. It reminds you that you are not the only one here, that you have never been the only one here, that this landscape is full of lives and presences and agendas and relationships that have nothing to do with you and do not require your participation and are not diminished by your ignorance of them. It is humbling in the best possible way. It is the kind of humbling that makes you feel not small and insignificant, but small and included. Small the way a single note is small within a symphony. Small and necessary and real. The sounds. The mountains keep sound travels differently in the mountains. This is not a poet observation. It is acoustic physics. The actual behavior of sound waves in complex terrain with variable temperatures and humidity levels, and the particular way that valleys and ridges focus and deflect and amplify different frequencies. In the mountains, a sound made in one valley can sometimes be heard in another valley entirely, carried over the ridge by some specific combination of air temperature and terrain that creates a kind of acoustic tunnel, a pathway for sound to travel that defies the normal expectation of how far sound carries. Mountain people have always known this. The Cherokee used it deliberately. Certain ridges were known to carry sound particularly well, and important communications were made from those ridges, voices carrying further than they should by ordinary reckoning, as if the mountains themselves were lending assistance. Later, the miners and the loggers and the summer visitors learned that too could hear conversations in camp from a quarter-mile away on certain evens when the air was still and the temperature had dropped just so, learned that the sound of the stamp of the stamp mill carried further up the valley than down it for reasons nobody could fully explain, learned that a particular place on a particular ridge had an echo, not the simple echo of a cliff face, but a complex echo. Ridge had an echo, not the simple echo, the semel, that a complex echo that knew nod, but in more voices than you had, within poor directions at slightly different times, so that a single shout would return as a vowel paid. The old towns are full of these acoustic peculiarities. Walk through the empty streets of a ghost town on a still day, and you will hear things that you cannot immediately account for. A creak from a building that has not been entered in decades. A sound like footsteps, or like the wind moving through a space with a very specific resonance. A sound like voices, far away, speaking in a language that is almost familiar. These are not ghosts, these are acoustics. But acoustics and ghosts have always been close neighbors. Close enough that the line between them is not always clear. Close enough that the explanation does not always diminish the experience. The mountains make sounds of their own, independent of anything living in them. The sound of rock expanding and contracting with the temperature cycles of day and night. A slow, deep, geological groan that is usually below the threshold of human hearing, but occasionally rises to the edge of it. A sound felt as much as heard, a vibration that comes up through the soles of your feet and into your body. The sound of water finding its way through underground passages, the aquifer beneath the mountain floor moving through limestone channels, dripping and rushing and pooling in ways that produce sounds at the surface that seem to have no source, seem to come from inside the earth itself, which is exactly where they come from. The sound of the forest and wind. Not the simple sound of leaves moving, but the complex, layered, harmonic sound of thousands of trees of different sizes and shapes and flexibility, all responding to the same wind in their own specific way, producing a sound that is different in every instant, that is never quite the same twice. That is the sound of enormous complexity resolving itself into something that the human ear receives as a single unified thing, as one sound, as the voice of the forest. The forest has a voice. Not in any metaphorical sense, literally, physically, as a product of the physics of air moving through complex biological structures, the forest has a voice. And on certain evenings, in certain valleys, in certain atmospheric conditions, it sounds almost like it is telling you something. It is telling you something. It is telling you what it always tells you, what it has been telling you since before you were born. What it told your ancestors and will tell your descendants, what it will go on telling everything alive in its presence for as long as there is forest and wind and something with ears to receive the message. It is telling you that you are here, that here is real, that the world is larger than your understanding of it and more beautiful and more patient and more forgiving and more forgiving and more full of things you have not yet noticed. That is the whole message. It does not require action. It does not require response. It only requires that you stop long enough to receive it. You are stopped. You are receiving it. The wildflowers of the ghost torments. Let me tell you about the flowers, because no account of the mountain ghost towns is complete without the flowers, without the extraordinary, extravagant, slightly defiant beauty of the wild flowers that have established themselves in the spaces left by the departure of human beings. The ghost towns in spring are not sad places. They are breathtaking places. They are places where you stand in what was once a kitchen garden and find that the kitchen garden has become a meadow, but a meadow of extraordinary richness, Because the soil of a kitchen garden that has been amended with compost and manure and the general fertility of a family's daily life for 20 years is soil of extraordinary depth and nutrition. Soil that, when the cultivated plants are gone and the tended arrangement is abandoned, simply proceeds to grow everything it possibly can with the enthusiastic thoroughness of soil that has been holding back. The columbine is always there. Rocky Mountain columbine, with its improbable combination of blue and white, its long backward-pointing spurs that look as if someone decided a flower should also be a hat and managed to pull it off. It nods in the mountain wind with a kind of cheerful self-possession that makes it seem less like a wildflower growing in the ruins of a human settlement and more like a small ambassador of the natural world, sent to make an official statement about who this place belongs to now. The statement is gentle. The statement is beautiful. The statement is, we were here before you and we are here after you, and look how lovely everything is. Yarrow grows in thick white mats along what were once the streets, its flat-topped flower clusters like tiny dinner plates set for a feast, its feathery leaves forming a soft carpet between the wooden boards that are slowly becoming part of the earth beneath them. The penstemons, beer tongues as the mountain people have always called them, grow up through the gaps in the building foundations in every shade of purple and pink and red. Their tubular flowers designed with bee precision for the specific dimensions of the bees that pollinate them. The whole system of flower and pollinator having worked itself out over millions of years of mutual negotiation and adjustment to arrive at this exact arrangement. California poppies have claimed the sunnier slopes of the Bodie town site. Not the cultivated poppies of gardens, but the wild ones, small and bright, and somehow more beautiful for being small. Their orange petals the color of a sunset in a clear desert sky, closing each evening when the sun goes down and opening each morning when it returns with the punctual faithfulness of something that knows its purpose and performs it without fail. There is a kind of order in this. Not the order of human arrangement, not the neat rows of a kitchen garden or the organized beds of a formal planting, but the order of ecological systems, the order that emerges from the interactions of thousands of species over long periods of time, each finding its place in relation to all the others, the whole system self-organizing into something that is not random, that has its own logic, its own structure, its own beauty. Stand in a field of ghost town wildflowers in June and you will feel this order. You will feel it as a kind of peace. Not the peace of emptiness or silence, though the silence is there too, the particular wildflower silence of a field, where the main sounds are insects and wind in the distant creek. The peace of complexity resolved, the peace of a system that knows what it's doing, the peace of 10,000 species of living things going about their business in their specific and irreplaceable ways, each one contributing to a whole that none of them can see or understand, but all of them sustained by simply being what they are. This is what the mountains have been trying to tell us. This is what every ghost town and every abandoned cabin and every wildflower growing through every floorboard has been demonstrating patiently for 100 years. That being what you are is enough. That doing what you do consistently, faithfully, without drama or self-consciousness is a contribution to something larger than yourself, something you may not be able to see or name, something that benefits from your presence without requiring your understanding. You don't need to understand the whole field to be a wildflower in it. You just need to open in the morning and close in the evening and let the bees find you. You just need to be, faithfully and completely, the particular thing that you are. The mountains have always known this. They have been trying to teach it for 400 million years. And on quiet nights like this one, nights when the noise of ordinary life has receded and the larger quiet of things has room to be heard, the lesson finally has a chance to get through. Let it get through. Let it settle into you the way the mountain mist settles into the valleys in the early morning. Slowly, completely, without effort, without destination except down, except here, except this low and quiet and settled place. You are in that place now. You have arrived. You are here, completely, quietly, at rest in the oldest classroom in the world, and the teacher, the mountain, the night, the ancient breathing darkness full of stars, the teacher is still speaking, not in words, in the quality of the air, in the particular weight of the darkness, in the sound of your own breath, slow and steady and real, the most fundamental evidence there is that you are alive and here and held. Breathe. Just breathe. The mountains are breathing with you. The rivers are flowing. The wildflowers are sleeping in the dark, their petals closed, their roots drawing water from the deep soil, their whole system resting and renewing in the dark, the way all living systems rest and renew in the dark, the way you are resting now, the way you are renewing now, the way the night is doing its ancient and necessary work on you. Let it work. You are safe here. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. The mountains know your name. The mountains have always known your name. The mountains have always known your name. They are saying it now in the language of wind and water and the deep, slow breathing of stone. Listen, you can almost hear it. The last lights in every ghost town, there was a last light. A final lamp lit in a final window on a final evening before the final departure. The last time a human hand struck a match in that particular building, in that particular room, in that particular arrangement of four walls and a roof that had, for some number of years, been someone's home, the match struck, the lamp lit. The light fell across the familiar surfaces of the room, the table, the chairs, the shelf with its remaining objects, the window that looked out on the street that was already so much emptier than it had been. And then, at some point in that final evening, the lamp was turned down. The flame shrank and wavered and went out, and the darkness came back in. The darkness that had been there before the first nail was driven, and before the first board was laid, and before the first fire was lit. The original darkness of that particular piece of the world. The darkness that is not absence but presence. The darkness that is the mountain's own. The darkness that is the mountain's own. The darkness that the stars shine through on clear nights, and that the snow illuminates on winter nights, and that holds, always, the particular quality of the specific place it belongs to. The darkness came back in, and it has been there ever since. Not empty. Never empty. Full of everything that happened in that room during all the years of light. Full of the voices, and the meals, and the arguments, and the laughter, and the particular human smell of lives being lived in close quarters through all the seasons of all the years. Full of the memory of the lamp's light, still warm somehow in the wood of the walls, still present in the way that warmth is present even after the source of it is gone. The last light went out, and the room became itself again, and the mountain became itself again, and the night became itself again. And in the particular fullness of that darkness, something was preserved that all the light in the world could not have preserved. The essence of the place, the irreducible truth of what it had been, the unchangeable fact of everything that had happened there. The last light went out, and the ghost town became what it is. Not dead, not empty, not finished, just quiet, just returned. Just held in the long, patient, loving darkness of a mountain that remembers everything and judges nothing and holds it all with the same steady, unhurried attention. The way the night holds you now, the way the darkness holds you, the way the quiet of this deep hour holds every thought you have released, every tension you have let go, every small and large urgency that you have put down for the night, holds all of it gently, in the way of things that are very large and very patient and very practiced at holding. You are held. The last light of your day has gone out, and what remains in the darkness is the real thing, the essential thing, the you that is not performing or managing or worrying or planning, just you, breathing, here, safe in the mountain dark, safe in the oldest dark there is, safe in the good night of the world,